Hello, good to come in here again, and this time we'll talk about land. You're welcome. Thanks for coming in to my art box. I'm here, your host, E. Chibu. Today, I want to talk about the land question in Africa. The question about land in Africa. I mean, Africa itself is already a question mark when you look at our map. It looks that way with a dot, a dotted island by the corner. And I think David Diop, in his poem My Africa, or Africa, actually raised this issue. The continent itself is shaped like a question mark. So the land of Africa itself is shaped like a question mark. And this continent also depends on land for everything. In fact, the little love that Africa gets from non-Africans in terms of foreign direct investments, in terms of government cooperations, collaborations, or international development corporations, are very much hinged about the land resources and the land wealth of this continent. Africa, as you all know, is the second biggest continent in the world. It is well known as a place where wealth and poverty exist side by side. A lot of gold, platinum, diamonds, copper, minerals, forests, resources in the Congo alone, a lot of water resources, but then the settlements reflect poverty. So it's a place where wealth and poverty live side by side. And it has a landmass of about 30.3 million square kilometers, with a population that is less than that of India, less than that of China. So as a continent, despite that it has a landmass that can accommodate USA, China, India, and to an extent continental Europe, it still has a population that is less than that of countries like India and China. This, a man called Mbono Ojike, who wrote in 1942 or thereabouts the book My Africa, he identified this as a blessing, which is contrary to what is seen very much in international media, both Western and to an extent African news media, where we are being presented as if we are a continent where all we do is make babies. You would see that even as a continent we have less population than India and China individually, but at the same time have enough landmass that can swallow all of these countries, including to an extent Europe. Isn't that a blessing? But yet, land in Africa is a curse. It's a curse. In Namibia, there's evidence that less than 6,000 Germans alone, Namibian Germans own more than 60% of the arable land in the country. Zimbabwe, we already know the story of Zimbabwe. We know that of South Africa. To an extent, in Southern Africa, there are settler Europeans. And then when you move away from Southern Africa and go to places like the West, you also go there and realize that the elites, who in most cases are less than 10,000 of an entire population of certain countries, own and occupy most of the land. So you get a picture in Southern Africa, you get a similar picture in West Africa, only that this and this changes. And then you go to East Africa, you get a mixed picture of the same, where only the very few own and enjoy most of the resources. So the big question then is, what is the land question in Africa? And when will this land question ever be answered? If you ask me, and this time I'm speaking as a student of the African Society, as a student of the African Society, I know that the issue of land is or stands at the center of development discourse. It is not, in fact, it's undisputable that our continent relies very much on land and land resources. And so, for us to achieve food security, for us to achieve industrialization, the continent needs its land resources, needs a form of control of its land resources. Increasing growth in terms of economic growth is necessary. Only through land can we achieve that. Reducing poverty through land, employment generation in the context of agriculture, forestry, we need land. In terms of political stability, we even need land, because to an extent, wherever you see conflicts happening in Africa is always related to natural resources. So we need to all reorganize the governance of land in order to avoid these natural resources. And then even in other places where these conflicts may not be happening, but when you look at their histories, if you look at their histories, and I'm talking about places like maybe South Africa, Namibia, Zimbabwe, you know, Southern Africa, like I mentioned earlier, they are all accidents waiting to happen. That is, something still needs to be done to achieve equality of either races or ethnic groups in the use and ownership or exercise of rights on land. It's been managed, but more is still needed to ensure that the peace is sustainable. And then you move away from Southern Africa, you go the northern part, Somalia, Zimbabwe, Somaliland. You know, up there have been crises also related to land. I don't need to talk about the wild, wild west, where I come from. It's also the issue of land. So, the big question is, if land is what we have for our development, why is it such a big problem that we are not using it to develop? Because the land is here, and we are here. That's because the issues of governance, the issues of policies, and as well as skills remain a big concern. Without the appropriate skill, without appropriate policies, without a good governance of land tenure, and all that are linked to it, we have a problem. So capacity building, capacity development when it comes to land affairs remains a big issue in our continent. Otherwise, new accidents are going to happen, new failures will occur, successes that have been achieved will finally degenerate into failures. Ladies and gentlemen, let's all look back as what land means to us and what we intend to use it for, and let's all hands be on deck, followers, leaders, and everyone within communities. Land is everything to Africa, and what we do with our land will determine our development future. Oh, don't leave yet. Before you leave, tap down there. Please, if you haven't already subscribed, because I know that YouTube does make these suggestions of my videos and sometimes randomly puts it in front of you. But if you for any reason love what you've heard, please, that's how it is always going to be. Tap down there, subscribe, and most importantly, your opinions are appreciated. Leave some comments in the comment section. Bye.